Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is the 17th day of February, 2021. I am Joe Benning, your committee chair. We also have with us today Senator Ingalls from Essex-Orleans, Senator Parent from Franklin County, Senator Mazza from Grand Isle, and we are momentarily expecting the appearance of Senator McCormick from Windsor. Just so you all know, we are live on YouTube. And I learned last night for the first time, since I missed my morning committee yesterday morning, I knew that they would be recorded and left available on YouTube. So I went on to YouTube and learned that my committee had been recorded, but it wasn't quite online at 6 o'clock. And I finally got them to appear at 8 o'clock. Which meant for the next 2 hours, I was listening last night to a committee that, well, let's just say if you have insomnia, I would recommend going and listening to the Judiciary Committee for the Senate. And I told them that this morning, so the joke is already out there. But hopefully this committee has much more humor, and you'll notice that we pick on each other and do fun things along the way. I would like to welcome you all. I understand that we are having a discussion concerning the Vermont Housing and Conservation Coalition, that several of you here are to update us on things that have been happening since the Capitol bill came out the last time around. I'm going to call your names one at a time, but one of the things that I would like you to do, because we have not just 3 brand new committee members, but also a brand new legislator, is give us a little bit about your personal background and tell us how you fit into the project that you are about to talk about. The first person who is on my list is Molly Dugan. And Molly, I'd like to welcome you and turn it right over to you to let us hear about what things have been going on since the last time you were before us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Chairman Benning. I have not been before you in this committee, so this is a real treat for me. And I am here for the record, I'm Molly Dugan, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Vermont Housing and Conservation Coalition, which today is our official Vermont Housing Conservation Coalition Legislative Day. So we thank you, Chair Benning, and your committee for welcoming some of our members into your committee today to talk about the impact of VHCB funding and funding from the Capitol bill that's gone into so many of our projects. And so I work at Cathedral Square. I was previously the director of the statewide SASH program for over 10 years and just recently switched positions and am now working mainly in the policy and strategic initiatives arena for Cathedral Square. And you're going to hear from my colleague, Cindy, and then her partner in a project in South Hero in just a little bit. And so I wanted to just, our game plan for our time with you all this afternoon is for me to just provide a brief update on Vermont Housing Conservation Coalition, and then really turn it over to our panelists so they can tell you about the amazing community projects and initiatives that they have been working on. So the Vermont Housing and Conservation Coalition is a group of about 50 organizations, large and small, not-for-profit as well as private businesses, working in your communities and throughout the state on the dual goals of affordable housing and conserving and restoring land, water, and recreational resources. Our organizations use Vermont Housing Conservation Board dollars that you all allocate through the budget process to achieve these goals that really directly impact the state's economy. The impact of our member organizations' work in communities is enduring and provides, and also, very long lasting, but has also been able to provide a really comprehensive and timely response to something that was very unexpected, which was the pandemic. And we've done so by creating housing in really short time frames for people to live safely, many of whom were unhoused and living in shelters when the pandemic struck. Also, our members have been ensuring access to open spaces for the much needed physical and mental health that we've all needed throughout this past year. I want to be really clear about our ask to you all, to the General Assembly as well. We support the governor's recommendation of $34.8 million to VHCB so that we can continue to do this vital work of not just responding to the pandemic, but leading the economic recovery and ensuring that all Vermonters have an opportunity to succeed. I want to assure you that we have a pipeline of projects ready to go that would have both an immediate and a long-term effect in communities across the state on housing and conservation and economic growth. Importantly, we also ask that the funds allocated to Vermont Housing Conservation Board are able to be used flexibly for either housing or conservation. The language in the budget recommendation specified that the 20 million of one time be used for housing. We really rely on and depend on the VHCB board and staff to really assess the critical needs and opportunities that are existing out in our communities in making those decisions. So we really urge you to consider flexibility around those funds. So I'm excited to turn things over to our panelists who are going to tell you stories and describe the projects that they've relied on with VHCB funding. And as you hear each speaker, I asked you to listen for some of the common themes, the value placed on partnerships, how these projects funded respect the unique community culture and history of place. How there's a focus on long-term and enduring impact for generations, and that there's a priority for serving people traditionally marginalized by seeking equitable access to housing and open land and healthcare and food and jobs. So with that, I want to turn it over to Cindy Reed, who's going to start us off talking about a wonderful project that's underway. Will soon be underway in South Hero, Vermont. She and Robin Way will be talking to you about that project.
Oh, so, no, not the islands. Oh, geez.
Mr. Chair, I hope you make me look good. I mean, this is very important to me. And this has been something that's been around for a long, long time. And these folks here today have been working hard on this. So thank you very much.
Senator Ingalls, this is where somebody will get a ribbon cutting opportunity for a photo op. So.
And I'll make sure you're invited, okay?
Cindy, just before you begin, I'd like to turn back to Molly for a couple of questions. The flexibility that you were talking about, is that the money that you currently are receiving, is that hamstrung somehow, or are you looking for changes in the language that awards that fund in order to be more flexible?
So really great question, Chair Benning, thank you. So in the governor's recommended fiscal year 22 budget, the way my understanding is how it's broken out is there's about 14.4 million of the 34.8 is made up of the property transfer tax revenue and capital bill funding. And then there's this 20 million of one time. So you add those all together and you get to the 34.8. There's some language from the governor's budget that refers to housing, that the 20 million be used for housing. And what we're asking for is that as always, that decision around balancing between those dual goals of Vermont Housing and Conservation Board funding happen at the VHCB level and not be fixed. And I can tell you that staff at the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, Executive Director Gus Seelig and Jen Holler, have proposed language to the House Appropriations Committee that they'd like that addresses that flexibility. So there is language in the works about that.
Okay, great. And the other question that I had for you, Cathedral Square, are you or Cindy going to explain to us what that is?
I might let Cindy go ahead and do that because I think she was planning to a little bit anyway. So thank you for asking, and I'll turn it over to Cindy for that.
Great. Cindy, welcome.
Great. Thank you so much for having us here today. Warm welcome, and including Senator Ingalls' cat, which I did notice on the screen. So good afternoon. I'm Cindy Reed. I'm the Director of Housing Development at Cathedral Square, and I'm here to tell you about a new housing development we're working on in South Hero called Bayview Crossing. Cathedral Square is a nonprofit senior housing and services provider. And we've worked with CIDR, a community group based in Grand Isle County, for over 15 years toward the goal of creating affordable senior housing with services in the islands. And if you have more questions about who Cathedral Square is, I'm happy to shed more light on that. CIDR knows there's a significant need for affordable housing in Grand Isle County. They serve approximately 600 seniors in the islands and often see unsafe housing conditions and are aware of cost-burdened residents and seniors who lack options due to the lack of affordable service-enriched housing in the islands. Robin Way, who's here today, who's the Executive Director of CIDR, will speak with you next. Together, we've identified an ideal location for a new affordable senior housing community in South Hero. It's a walkable, smart growth site, which is adjacent to a federally qualified community health center, the new library, a bagel cafe, the fire and rescue station, a new daycare early learning center, and soon a restaurant brewery. This is in South Hero's designated village center. Shown here, Molly's going to share some slides. Shown here is a conceptual rendering, which was just sent in this morning by Weeman Lamphere Architect. So we have a conceptual rendering, and this is a 30-unit senior housing building. It's independent living with optional SASH services available. SASH is support and services at home, which Molly mentioned earlier. The building will be designed and built to Efficiency Vermont's high performance certification, so it'll be energy efficient. The design will promote aging in place. We'll have ADA accessible units and all apartments will be adaptable. And CIDR will have an office in this new building, which they'll own, and CIDR will provide transportation and other services to residents. And then next slide is a floor plan. It's a 2-story level of the residential portion, which is the long rectangle. And then the little square in front shows community space and then CIDR's office space. There's going to be some mutual using of the community room and a small conference room, but we're going to have a wellness program, exercise equipment, on-site laundry, which is included in rent, a wellness nurse space for part-time nursing, and a big community room for socialization. And then I think the last slide shows the other side of the building is the CIDR office space. So let's see. Cathedral Square, just to talk about need a little bit, Cathedral Square has nearly 900 people on our wait list for housing. That's our overall wait list, and that's for independent living. And then we have about 400 people on our wait list for assisted living. We already have 45 people on our inquiry list for Bayview Crossing. One of the challenges, which I'm sure you all know and have heard about, of developing in rural communities is water and sewer. We have identified sewer capacity on an adjacent lot, and the South Hero Fire District is very supportive of this project. However, the water line that serves this part of the village is undersized, old, and leaky. So we were successful in obtaining a grant from the Northern Border Regional Commission to fund a new 1,400 linear foot water line. And this water line will serve not only the housing, but have additional capacity, which will benefit additional economic development down the road, where in this area of the village where growth and development is desired. So really the investment in this housing and the infrastructure in this rural area will create a positive impact for decades to come. This project absolutely would not be possible without the early commitment of funding from the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, which we call VHCB. VHCB funding commitment provided us momentum, and we're planning to begin construction this September for this much needed housing. And we ask for your support for the increased funding for VHCB, as Molly outlined, and appreciate your leadership and the opportunity to meet with you. And we would love you all to come to a ribbon cutting, which hopefully can be an in-person one in September 2022. And are there any questions, or we could move right to Robin?
So we're feeling from Dr. Levine that perhaps sometime in the fall, we might actually be getting back to normal. We just came off of a caucus with Dr. Levine. So hopefully you're correct. I didn't see garage space available. Do you have garage space for like 12 or so Corvettes in that?
We find our residents don't typically have Corvettes, but this will be mixed income. And we do have underground parking under a portion of the building. we had to do some value engineering and couldn't afford the full parking footprint. But we do have about 14 underground spaces and then surface parking for our residents. And we're doing some sharing of parking in this PUD because there is a lot of activity there. So yes, there is underground and surface parking.
This will be unique in a way that the islands, all the 5 towns in the islands have no senior housing, and it'll be, people want to stay in the islands. It'd be great to have their own senior housing, because right now they have to either commute to Franklin County or Chittenden County for almost every service possible. So this is pretty exciting. And also they don't have town water or, town sewer. I mean, it's got to be it's a really ambitious program, and they've got it done. They've been working on this for so many years, and it's right in the heart of South Hero as we enter. So Cindy Smith, does a lot of work naturally at Cathedral Square. Which how many units do you have in your whole?
We have a little over 900 rental units and in about 27 different communities.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to build your garage though if Dick Moz is ever gonna move in there.
Yeah, all right. That's right. Thank you.
I did have another question with respect to this particular locality. You might have said it, but there was a train going by my office window at the time and I had to mute off. How many residents are in this facility?
30 apartments. 26 are 1 bedroom and 4 are 2 bedroom.
Okay.
So 30 total apartments.
Very good. Any questions, committee? Or snarky comments regarding Senator Mazza?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
You were turning it over to Robin.
Yes,
Robin, welcome.
that would be me, and thank you. I am Robin Way. I am in my 20th year now as the executive director of Champlain Islanders Developing Essential Resources. Usually we are known by our acronym CIDER. The acronym came before the name, I found out. We are a community-based nonprofit organization serving primarily seniors and persons with disabilities living in Grand Isle County. We were founded about 30 years ago after a study. Some of you been around for a while might remember our representative Jane Potvin. Jane was the driving force behind the study that looked at the needs for older residents in Grand Isle County, as the perception at the time was that an awful lot of people were having to move off island as they age. And I would interject that in terms of a sense of place, I know as a lifelong Vermonter and Springfielder and proud of my hometown, I have found very few places that have a sense of place as much as the Champlain Islands do. Maybe it's because it's an island. There's something psychological when you cross that water to go to the mainland, or when you can't cross it because the road is closed because there's not a lot of other ways off. So the study basically showed at the time that it made more sense to direct resources, partly because of the small population living here, into helping people age in place, as opposed to, at the time, building a facility or some sort. And that's been our primary mission since we were created in 1993. And I would just note that we're also a funded program of the United Way of Northwest Vermont. As Cindy noted, we see or serve approximately 600 individuals over the course of an average year. Our programs and services generally fall into sort of 2 overlapping areas. The first is access to services and resources. Some of these things we provide ourselves. Our most active and visible program, and for this we often thank Senator Mazza, who we like to call the godfather of cider, for our door-to-door transportation program. We contract with Green Mountain Transit, the regional public transit provider, to provide services for elders and people with disabilities, as well as most of the Medicaid transportation in Grand Isle County. We also provide home delivered meals to seniors throughout Grand Isle County. We have an independent senior meals program called Neighbor Meals. And we do things like provide exercise and wellness programs, strength and balance training classes, Tai Chi, We collect and loan out special need equipment like wheelchairs and walkers. I am the king of commodes in Grand Isle County, an honor I never thought that I would achieve, but have. We do a lot of home accessibility and safety projects, as there are a lot of people living in older homes or manufactured homes where your door is 3 feet off the ground. And if you have a mobility issue, that can be a pretty challenging thing. We've built 123 wheelchair ramps and similar projects to date. We also provide information and referral for people to things that we don't do. So a lot of what we do has to do with providing access. The other piece of what we do is socialization programs, and all of the programs we operate have a socialization component, as social isolation is a big issue in anywhere in rural Vermont. As you can imagine, COVID-19 has wreaked havoc with those sort of programs. So our group shopping trips, group excursion trips, and congregate senior meals are sort of on hold for the time being. We also send a newsletter out to about half the households in the islands. Despite all the efforts that we put forward towards helping people age in place, and we have amazing support in the community. We have a volunteer base of well over 100 people in normal times, helping provide these services, which with a population of 7,000 people is pretty impressive. But for a lot of these people we've known over the years, no matter what we do, staying in their home is no longer either really a safe or a smart option, particularly people living alone. So for about 16 years now, we have been working as an organization to try and facilitate the development of some type of affordable, service-enriched senior housing for the people living in the 5 small towns that make up our county. Throughout most of this process, Cathedral Square has served us as a technical advisor. Again, we go all the way back to when Tim Ash was working on this project with us back 10, 12 years ago, and a cheerleader. But for the last few years, they have been an active partner in our project. And though I note that even though Bayview Crossing will be a Cathedral Square developed and managed facility, please understand it is first and foremost a local island community project. We have tried to make this as islandy as you possibly can. The design of the building is based on a farmhouse and a barn. Well, you have to kind of use your imagination a little bit. It's been challenging because, as Cindy said, we're sitting on rocks in the middle of the lake. There are no municipal septic systems. There's very limited municipal water. We examined sites and we dug holes from Grand Isle to South Hero until we finally found the septic capacity we needed in the back corner of Bayview Farm, which is partly where the name comes from, and a location right behind the new community health center, the library, the fire station, and soon a pub and brewery. I'm sure that'll be very popular for our seniors. One of the exciting, and Crossing, the other part of the name is Crossing, is we were trying to recognize something that had a piece of island heritage and history, and there are very few things that had more of an impact on the Champlain Islands over the years than the railroad when it came through. So Bayview Crossing, though we have been told and reminded that the railroad came nowhere near where our building is. One of the most exciting pieces of this project is the fact that CIDR will co-locate our offices in this facility. This will not only allow us to help integrate the housing and the residents living there into the South Hero community and the South Hero community into the housing, but it's also going to provide an affordable home for our organization for years to come. So I was telling the folks before, this is going to save us about $20,000 a year that we could use for services instead of paying in mortgage payments. The community, the support in the community from the town of South Hero, from the people in this community has been just outstanding and extremely heartwarming. The need for this type of housing has been known and understood for a long time. It may only be 20 or 30 miles to Burlington from here, but it's a world away for the people who are moving there. As part of our effort last year, and to give you an idea of the support, we started a capital campaign, a very quiet capital campaign, to try to raise a modest $250,000. And we had never done a capital campaign before, so this was kind of scary during a pandemic and an economic collapse. However, as of today, I can say we have donations and pledges exceeding $436,000. So we have more than reached our goal at this point, and I think stands as a testament to the support of the community for this project. So like everyone else, I am here to ask for your support for the governor's recommended allocation of $34.8 million to the VHCB in the FY22 budget. It's played a huge part, as Cindy mentioned, in our project, a critical role. It will play a more critical role as we go forward. But in a bigger sense, this increased funding that's proposed in the budget is going to have an immediate and lasting impact on the health and quality of life of Vermonters, not only in Grand Isle County, but throughout the state. So we're very excited. I would like to wear one of those helmets and have the golden shovel and do the in the ground thing sometime before I retire in a year and a half. So we appreciate your support in that effort, if nothing else. So thanks for listening, and any questions, we're here to answer.
Well, just a few comments. First off, we don't talk about helmets in this committee.
Yeah, right. The chair is a motorcycle rider, and he wants to do away with helmets.
Noted.
I was caught by your description of the islands being rocks and they're digging holes there because, as luck would have it, this past summer, my wife decided to get me a metal detector to get me out of the house. And you're perilously close to where I stumbled across a very old coin, actually, from 1733. And your description of being a world away from Burlington could not be more apt, because I love the islands. The atmosphere is absolutely wonderful. And I could spend a whole lot more time playing with my metal detector on your beaches. I am also fascinated by the Zoom element of these meetings, because especially if you put on the speaker view as opposed to the gallery view, you get to learn a lot about a person from the environment that they're sitting in. I'm not going to ask you about the chicken behind you, but I would like to
That's
know.
a good story. That's a good story. He'll tell you that.
Well, maybe you'll want to talk about that, but I was curious as to who the drummer was.
That's Thelma the chicken.
All right. Whoever the drummer is with next to Mr. Bill, I was curious as to who the drummer was. And then you can tell us about the chicken.
That is me in my other life. When you could get together with people, I've been in a band. I am a drummer in a band since 1994. I play in a band called Yankee Pot Roast.
Good for you. Well, there's a couple of us that are musicians on this in this committee. The other thing is, have you ever actually been into the Institutions Committee in the Senate?
No, sir.
Well, you referenced Dick as being a godfather of sorts. About 10 years ago, 7 Days did an article on him, and they had him on the front page, and it called him the Godfather. And I cut that page out, and it's hanging on the wall of the Senate Institutions Committee. So he gets that same kind of reference when if you ever come into institutions, you'll understand why. Senator Ingalls, I believe you had your hand up.
Just a comment as well. I think we're going to send the chair, Senator Benning, over there with his metal detector to hopefully find a cannon so we can melt that down and create a bust for Senator Mazza. So
we're getting closer to where he found that coin, though. He wouldn't tell us last year where he found it, but now we're getting closer.
It's perilously close with this conversation.
It's in my district now. Now I'm finding out, because I thought it was for a while. It was down here, but now we're finding some secrets. Let me just say a little something about Robin Way. He has run a fantastic organization. Islands Up. Everybody, they go to shopping trips. He's got those handicap vans all over the place, and the meal delivery. And it's a model, I'll tell you, for people that visit from other parts of the state, what he does for transportation for the elderly. There's trips all over the place for him. During a pandemic, of course, we can't do it, but it certainly is a lot of freedom for the islanders who can't get off the island because of the driving or transportation. But he provides transportation, and it's something to see. I hope he never retires, because it's such an asset to the community.
Well, Robin, we can't let it go. What's with the chicken?
That is our spokes chicken, Thelma, who lived next door to our old office and began visiting us and including laying an egg in my chair as I sit in the chair. Very Vermont. So we began using her in marketing. And if you pick up the Islander newspaper, the once a month, in the first page of the first issue of each month, there's a page devoted to cider stuff. And Thelma has her own advice column.
Right.
She's now 5 years old and still laying eggs.
Interesting. Things you learn.
And
on
we're told
Sunday.
that we can't have them in our office at Cathedral Square. So if you'd like to put a stipulation on the funding that it be poultry friendly, I'd be supporting that.
You can't claim her as a supportive animal.
I don't know, maybe.
I'd ask the Human Rights Commission if you can get that by them. You might have a case to make. Anyway, thank you for coming. I see we still have Josh, Patrick, Kathy, and I think that's all I have left on my screen. Who would like to go next?
Good afternoon, Senator. Actually, I'm here with Patrick Shattuck from Rural Edge. And I'm just going to say a few comments and then hand it over to Patrick, who I'm sure you're very familiar with, Senator Benning.
Yep.
So I work for Evernorth, and many of you probably know our former company, which was called Housing Vermont. And we actually went through a merger with a similar nonprofit that's based in Maine, and we have a new name called Evernorth, but we're still doing the same work of building and investing in affordable housing and community development, but we're doing it across Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, which is very exciting. And but I will still tell you that Vermont is probably a leader, certainly in terms of having the Vermont Housing and Conservation Fund. There's nothing like that in Maine or New Hampshire, and we often get told how lucky we are when we cross the state line. So thank you very much. We have just a little presentation of New Avenue, and if I can do the screen share correctly, which I think I can. And this was part of your handouts as well. I think it's on their committee website. So with Rural Edge, we're co-developers and we'll be co-owners of this building. And if you've been in downtown St. Johnsbury, you've seen this building. It is very in the center of downtown St. Johnsbury, formerly a very beautiful hotel that was built in the 1897. Our construction manager is Breadloaf Construction, and I just want to note that they're using many local subs on this building. So when you do
apartments there.
There'll be 40 apartments, and all of the first floor is commercial space.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually on the commercial space, we're very fortunate. We have a group of local investors who purchased the commercial space. It's a condominium. And they are working, actually have secured, the St. Johnsbury Academy is going to move their adult education program to spaces on Eastern Avenue. So we're very excited to already know that that commercial space, which was vacant for over 10 years, I mean, it was not too attractive looking when we bought the buildings. So that's really going to liven up the downtown. Also just want to look at we have a couple of 4 photos from the building. And, when you do a historic renovation, I mean, first of all, it's amazing when you strip it down to the studs and the brick. It's just an amazing space. And some of these timbers probably came from some old growth forest and have held up really well over the years. But the other thing we found were these beautiful cast iron columns that had previously been covered up. And we're going to bring the storefronts back to their original footprint. And now this will be part of what you see when you enter the storefronts on the first floor level. So we're about 50% through construction, and our work brings a lot of activity during construction. There's over 100 workers that in the downtown during this, which is always helpful. You know, they stop and they get their lunch and they get their coffee and they buy their lottery tickets. But then when we finish, we'll bring 40 households will move into the building, and the commercial space will finally go from being vacant to having activity. So it's a real boost for the downtown. And there's one other really great connection with St. Johnsbury. And I want to mention this because we have Josh here to talk about the amazing work he's done on trails. And we're just finding the connection to trails in our housing has become more and more important, and particularly in this time of the pandemic where people want to get access to the outside. It's so important. And in downtown St. Johnsbury, there's this beautiful bike pavilion, and you can now connect to the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail from downtown St. Johnsbury. And I haven't done this section of the rail trail. I really want to do it, but you can go from here to Danville. Actually, I would recommend starting in Danville and going to St. Johnsbury because that's going to be more downhill. So it's to me, it's such a great example of what we have been doing for over 30 years, this connecting of housing and conservation, and asking the question, where should people live and where should we conserve land, and how can we get connection for people living in our towns and communities to the outdoor recreation. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm really excited about the work we're doing in downtown St. Johnsbury, and Patrick's going to give you a little broader view of what we're doing in the kingdom.
Kathy, before you move from that picture, Senators McCormick and Mazza, you may remember Senator Robert Ide.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
that's the old Ide building. That's
the ET and HKI building.
You know, I'm sitting here and saying I've seen there. I've been down there before.
Well, Rob's offices used to be right on the other side of that bike pavilion.
Isn't that funny? I said, why am I looking familiar? Okay, that's
Yeah,
what it was.
yeah. Thanks. That's great. Great connection.
Yeah. Huh.
Patrick, you want to take over?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I'm Patrick Shattuck. I'm the Executive Director of Rural Edge. And while we're very excited about New Avenue, I wanted to sort of talk about ongoing investment in St. Johnsbury and really take the bird's eye view. And there's no better place to get that bird's eye view than from the 4th floor fire escape at New Avenue. And when you get up there, that's one of the main ways to access the construction site. You can really get a great view. You can see the church steeples, you can see the Lambert Packard designed commercial buildings, you can see the great neighborhoods. And really, upon closer investigation, you can see the vast investment in the community by VHCB over time. Across the street, you have the Passumpsic View Apartments, which was actually in that last picture in the background. That's now 20 years old. That was an infill development following a devastating fire, 25 units of elderly housing. The HEB was the first funder in. Next door to that is the 1867 building, also damaged in that fire, but restored with commercial space, general occupancy, rental, and now First Housing, which is supportive housing for young mothers leaving rehab and reuniting with their children under 3. You know, also viewed from that fire escape, you can see we've got a sober house, we've got family housing, and we've got housing that was completed.
Patrick, are you planning on
new units designated for those moving from homelessness?
Patrick, are you planning on showing us pictures? Because we haven't seen any pictures.
Well, you have a handout that does have some
I'm sorry.
pictures.
Okay.
So hopefully you can access that shows all of these. You know, all of this is really woven into the fabric of the community. That's 178 units over time that houses some of the most vulnerable population and also dealt with some of the most difficult to develop sites. And all of those 178 units, that doesn't include the 40 units at New Avenue, have been supported with funding from VHCB. You know, in this same block, there's been great new investment even during COVID-19. Successful restaurants, a distillery, and an art supply store have all opened. And last week in the Caledonian Record, there was an article highlighting the purchase of a long vacant building and the plans of its owners. And when asked why he was investing in this building, he said, you know, he saw the distillery, he saw the investment in New Avenue, and he had a great breakfast at Central Cafe, which is in one of our buildings. And he said, it told me that there are people here who think there's something going on in St. Johnsbury. It's clear something is going on in St. Johnsbury, and that has led to a really incredibly tight rental housing market. You probably haven't heard of the tight Northeast Kingdom housing market and the need for new units, but this is something new that we are experiencing. And while we're really excited to have 40 new units at New Avenue come back to the market, the numbers that we have and the need for additional investment are daunting. You know, we updated our waiting lists at the end of 2020. We have about 40 different properties, 700 total units, and each property has its own waiting list. One bedroom subsidized units, and again, there may be 40 of these waiting lists. They average between 40 to 60 people on each list. The people nearing the top of the list have been on it since 2017. Our vacancy rate is less than 2%. We're turning over units as fast as we can, and we're immediately moving someone in. You know, that compares to a vacancy rate of about 10% as recently as 2018. And, you know, as of January, there are still over 100 homeless individuals in the motels. We received CRF funding through VHCB in the same one block area to bring 7 units online for families living in the motels. And we moved 27 people in, with families with as many as 4 kids who'd been homeless for as long as 2 years. You know, we've got a huge issue. You know, these are the people we see. These are the experiences we have. You know, just some recent examples. We frequently find 2 young sons of a caregiver in one of our elderly buildings napping on the sofas in the community room, which is closed due to COVID-19. The caregiver assures the staff that they wouldn't be sleeping there if they had an apartment of their own, and they inquire about their position on our waiting list. You know, we've seen additional caregivers where care is probably secondary to the need for housing for extended family members. We've had tent communities pop up behind our buildings when guests have met their 14-day visitor limit and people wanted to comply with the terms of their lease. You know, we regularly make referrals for emergency housing or add guests to our waiting list, but in many places, in many instances, there's simply no place for them to go. We added 20 new units in Lindenville this summer with the opening of Olivia Place. One of the market rate units there was occupied by 2 brothers who've had steady employment, and this gave them the opportunity to move up from an apartment that lacked heat, reliable water, or even a lock on the door. So, you know, the need for additional investment is huge. And so we completely support the governor's recommendation for full funding for VHCB. The investment is not just in bricks and mortar, it's also in people. At Rural Edge, you know, we also have a SASH program with over 500 participants. And we have on-site coordinator and nursing at Passumpsic View Apartments in St. Johnsbury. Through SASH, we've just recently hosted 7 COVID-19 vaccine clinics, administering shots to 150 people. You know, we also have a community building and engagement team that focuses on our family developments. At Mountain View, our largest development in St. Johnsbury, food security is a huge issue. So there's a resident-led food shelf that serves on average 50 families a week. This summer, we worked with residents to build 12 community gardens at different developments. And they are well used, and people are already staking their claim for this growing season. And we were a really early participant in the Everyone Eats program. To date, our SASH and community and building engagement team, by the end of next week, we will hit the 5,000 meal mark that we've delivered And we have partnerships with restaurants in all 3 counties, so Essex, Orleans, and Caledonia counties. And we're making food deliveries 3 days a week. So really a huge impact. And we thank you for your ongoing support. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Patrick, New Avenue House, any thought to putting back on the dome that was on the corner tower?
You know, there's been a lot of discussion. It's been looked at. I know Kathy could offer some opinion. You know, it really, you know, it would always be great to have that. It was going to be an added cost, and it wasn't going to be able to generate any additional usable space. We already know the pressures of cost on historic buildings, so we weren't able to do that. It's interesting. The family that ran the hotel for a number of years, their grandchildren, who basically grew up in the hotel, have been in regular contact with us, and we were interviewing them for our annual report about their experiences. And they've been very tough and critical, wanting to lobby for that as well. And finally, after about 3 or 4 interviews and hearing all we're doing, last week, the granddaughter, who I believe is now in her 80s, said, you know, okay, she's convinced the hotel's in good hands. So while we wish we could put the dome on, you know, it wasn't financially feasible, but we've certainly made every effort to preserve the features that were in the building.
Okay, Denise, you can take down the screen share. Committee questions. I don't see anybody chomping at the bit. So I'll ask one last question, Patrick. You're going to have 40 residential units in New Avenue. How many were there that you're going to 40 from?
I believe there were 47 originally. Historically, about 10 to 15% weren't leased because they were so small. So we relocated 39 households from the building. And while they would have the opportunity to apply again, we made sure, because of the how difficult it is for anyone to move, that we found them housing, be it in the community or where they wanted to go, where they would be happy. So we don't anticipate many are going to be moving back.
Okay. Seeing no other hands, Josh Ryan, you're bringing up the rear. Welcome to Institutions.
Here we go. All right, well, thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity. Before I get started, I did want to share a personal note that over the last year, I'm proud to say, or maybe ashamed to say, that this is my second Zoom call. So go easy on me. I can tell I'm with a rowdy bunch. So, but that said, I do appreciate the opportunity to share my support of the VHCB funding. My name's Josh Ryan. I'm the principal and founder of Timber and Stone LLC. We are a trail building and design business based in East Montpelier. And we have the pleasure and the opportunity to design and build recreational trails throughout Vermont, throughout the Northeast, and Illinois. So Vermont is our home. We take great pride in the work we've done here, and which is part of the reason that I've been invited to share some of the trails that we built with you that reside on land that was conserved with VHCB funding. Patrick's stories are, I got to say, pretty touching and meaningful. It's a tough act to follow, if you will, but I do believe that there is linkage between the work I do and the work that he does. If you think about just this past year, this time of personal challenge and isolation, trails are often places where people go to collect their thoughts, to recreate, to contemplate, to think of people they've lost, to think of people they want to marry, to think about the possibility of raising a family. We at Timber and Stone LLC take that exceptionally seriously, and you'll see that in every turn of the trails that we build, the benches we install, the places that up until this last year, we literally thought more about recreation than we did about contemplation. It is undeniable the power of trails and their ability to comfort all of us. Our trails that have resided on VHCB funded lands lean heavy towards equal access and accessibility for all. And so we design and build these with the lens towards those in a wheelchair. And when you do that, you've then opened it up to all people, whether that be a grandmother walking with a grandson, or a person with limited sight, or possibly even, I would argue, someone who's not typically comfortable being in the outdoors. When they're on our boardwalks, they feel safe, secure, and sort of in a different place than what's been going on in the last year. We've adopted some strategies through the pandemic. About the other day, I was in a grocery store. Actually, it was more like a month ago, but when everybody's been to these grocery stores where they start forcing you one direction, and it's you have to follow the lines. And so we've adopted that and suggested that some of these trails become one directional to maintain social distancing and during this time. It's an unbelievable opportunity and time for trails. It has a direct impact on the economy in Vermont. We are a business that roughly brings in gross receipts $1 million to $1.5 million per year. There are 4 other trail builders in Vermont. I'm not confident of their numbers. I like to call us sometimes for profit, but we do work exclusively with public entities and nonprofit agencies that are providing open and public access to recreation, and most notably on VHCB funded lands. So one example I'd like to share with you is a project we're working on currently. It's in Newport. It's the Bluffside Trail. It's located on land that was 150-foot long boardwalk that skirts the edge of Lake Memphremagog and provides connectivity between Newport and trails that eventually lead to Canada. So if you think of the connectivity of recreation, of economy, and of education within wetlands, it's pretty powerful stuff. This particular project here is also located on VHCB funded property, located in Moncton with the Nature Conservancy. We built a 900-foot long accessible boardwalk with benches along the way for viewing. And the terminus is way out at a beaver pond with excellent views of beaver ecology. And it has become an absolute magnet during the past year for people coming from all across that region in Vermont. Nature Conservancy's counters have quadrupled over the past 7-8 months of users on this one particular trail, never mind all the other properties they've conserved. The other photos we have are examples of other types of jobs. As the name suggests, timber and stone, we have timber boardwalks, we have stone staircases. Tools are bought from local manufacturers in Barrie for shaping stones. Our machines are bought in Essex at a Kubota dealership there. Stones are gathered and quarried in quarries down in the Royalton area, the Bethel area. All of this provides jobs, provides opportunities for employment outside of just my 7 to 12 workers, depending on the year. It provides state parks and state forests more places to manage, which creates even more jobs. So not to mention the recreational gear that is used on these trails that we build. And I'm sure you follow the same, the same press that I do. The recreation in Vermont and the economy of recreation gear has actually absolutely exploded. Good luck trying to find a kayak right now for 2021. So all these things are linked to the land on which these trails are built. That is tied to VHCB funding. The hefty budget that is planned, we're in absolute support of, both for housing and conservation. We see, as I mentioned earlier, all these things are linked together. So with that said, I believe we might have a repetition of photos here at the end. My apologies, my administrative assistant, AKA my wife, had a little issue, but these were all projects that we are very proud of, and the use has been far beyond anything I can imagine. So I encourage you to hopefully join us in 2021 for the ribbon cutting up in Bluffside Trail. It is a sight to behold, and we're excited to just be part of it. With that, I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions or comments.
I'm sure Senator Ingalls will want to be there for the ribbon cutting.
Yes, it's right across from my house. It's right across from the bay, and it's all that Josh says it is. It's created a tremendous amount of excitement, and people were very at first upset about how this land was purchased, and at the time that was purchased. But I don't think there's anybody upset now. I think there's just nothing but excitement for what's going on there.
Was that your office on the trail or on the side of a little sign?
It was.
Real estate
It
firm
was
here.
my boat parking. My boat parking.
So Kingdom Trails in Burke, somehow hook it up with the St. J connection to the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. You'd have to go right through a place called Lindenville. Is there any talk about that out there?
Was there a question in there, or?
Well, just a rhetorical one, I
I
guess.
think it was
Just watch how you answer that. Just be
kind of
careful.
like more of a request.
Just watch.
Yeah, we just want to plant that
He's-
seed for
He's
future.
a good lawyer, so watch how you answer that, you know?
Senator McCormick.
Thanks. First, I want to apologize for being late. I had a family matter, which always sounds scary. All is well, but I did have a family matter. All of this just makes me hungry for spring. I want to get out there, you know. Just thank you for your good work. It looks beautiful, and in particular the walkways, the wooden walkways through wetlands, because otherwise I've seen it where they bulldozed a path or something. This respects the integrity of the wetland and yet allows access.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate those comments. And you know, the business has been around for 20 years, and it's evolved based on the crew that I have. And the crew I have is the most dedicated people you can imagine, able to haul in material on ice with snow machines and frame in the winter, or work in 3-degree heat in the summertime. But I did want to, since you did appreciate those walkways, the pictures you saw on the walkways, including the one we are building that I don't have pictures of up in Newport, are decked with black locust, which is natural. It's a hardwood. It's naturally rot resistant, and it comes from Vermont. It's been all harvested in the southern Vermont and milled in Putney, and you know, that is something we take very seriously. We're proud of, and keeps dollars in Vermont, and also you're not putting in a ton of chemicals into the wetlands through a 100% pressure treated structure. So
I was wondering how that wood was, because that would work across, because I'm sure you got to get permits for all that, and you know, they must be really strict, you know.
yeah.
That trail between St. Johnsbury and Danville, it goes beyond Danville, doesn't
That's
Oh, yeah.
it? Yeah.
Lamoille Valley Rail Trail should be going the whole distance, and we have not. That one's a little too straight for us. We like curvy trails, so I have not participated in that. But I believe that there is a strong effort to bring connection.
Yeah,
Well, it's all
we're
the way
actually-
over the mountains now, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes up to Swanton, but the last year's capital bill got the money together to make that get finished. So we're trying to-
AOT funded the biggest, yeah.
Yeah. I know it gets
Having
at least as
we're
far
having
as
an
Route
overview
12.
tomorrow.
It gets as far as Route 12 at least, anyway. It's not finished all the way to Swanton, is it?
Not
Not
yet.
yet. That's what they're working
No,
on now.
that's where Amy,
Working
yeah.
on it.
All right, other questions? Folks, we do appreciate you coming to join us this afternoon. I want to wish you well for the rest of your day. And say hi to Thelma the chicken on your way out there, Robin.
Thank you so very much for having us and supporting
Thank you.
Vermont Housing and
Thank you very
Conservation
much.
Board. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks for
everyone.
coming.
Thank you.
Committee, we are all done for the afternoon, so we'll see you tomorrow.
Now I got to go on a rules committee. Okay.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks.
Denise, we all set for tomorrow?
Yes, we are, sir.
Okay, then I'm gonna go do legal work.